good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time, as we wrap up Monday, 28th April, 2025. Let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China is proactively implementing macroeconomic policies to achieve its 5% growth target. Despite escalating trade tensions with the U.S. Finance Minister Lan Fong says these policies support employment and exporters, hinting at potential stimulus. Chinese leaders dismiss U.S. tariff threats, asserting they can safeguard jobs and exports. The nation claims food and energy security without U.S. imports, citing self-sufficiency and alternative sources. Baosteel anticipates nationwide output reductions to address market imbalances, projecting a 2% decrease in domestic steel consumption for 2025. Outage Robotics and Nvidia are integrating humanoids into factories and retail, with Outage deploying walker robots in a car plant. Tencent and Alibaba are reportedly acquiring Nvidia GPUs from ByteDance's stockpile, as the H20 chips are restricted from export to China. Akeso received regulatory approval for its lung cancer drug, ivonescimab, which outperformed Merck's Keytruda in a Phase 3 trial. Unitree is considering a Hong Kong IPO, joining a surge in listing plans. Xi Jinping plans to visit Shanghai, signaling strength amid the ongoing trade war. Amidst these tensions, the United States finds itself a focal point, with nations facing pressure to align with one side. Treasury Secretary Bessent indicates that de-escalating trade tensions is contingent upon China's actions. Uncertainty surrounding U.S.-China trade discussions has led to a decline in grains and soybeans markets. Hong Kong stocks experienced a slight decrease as investors adopted a wait-and-see approach due to a lack of clear China stimulus measures. Goldman Sachs projects that Chinese funds will purchase $110 billion worth of Hong Kong-listed stocks, noting that southbound inflows have reached $78 billion this year. As mentioned earlier, Unitree is considering a Hong Kong IPO, joining a surge in listing plans. Elsewhere, Citi has upgraded a sneaker stock, anticipating that the stock will benefit from a backlash against Nike in China. Shares have already decreased by over 15% in 2025. Pirelli is expected to announce that China's Sinochem no longer controls the tire manufacturer. Global markets and economy. Global shares are trending upwards as investors await developments regarding potential U.S. tariffs. Wall Street experienced muted trading ahead of significant economic data, releases, and earnings reports from major tech companies, with the Dow Jones, S&P 500, and Nasdaq Composite posting slight gains. The Indian rupee appreciated by 38 paise, closing at 85.03 against the US dollar. United States. IBM has announced a plan to invest $150 billion within the U.S. over the next 5 years. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's April outlook report suggests that Brazil is capitalizing on China's diversification of soybean imports, a consequence of tariffs imposed on U.S. soybeans. The U.S. is also reportedly encouraging Eastern European nations to diverge from EU energy transition objectives. Goldman Sachs analysts suggest that U.S. tariffs could put 16 million Chinese export jobs at risk, particularly in sectors like retail, wholesale goods, apparel, and communications equipment. A recent survey reveals that most banks favor the EU delaying the implementation of new trading book regulations, mirroring similar decisions in the U.S. and the U.K. Russia and Ukraine conflict. Senator Rubio has indicated that the coming week is very critical for negotiations related to the Russia-Ukraine war, following President Trump's questioning of Vladimir Putin's commitment to ending the conflict. Turkey has proposed hosting a summit between Russian and U.S. leaders. Russia has announced a 72-hour ceasefire in Ukraine, In observance of the anniversary of World War II, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov has stated that Russia will persist in targeting facilities utilized by the Ukrainian military. Russia has claimed to have regained control of the Kursk border region, a statement refuted by Ukraine. Putin asserts that North Korean friends aided Russia in dislodging Ukrainian forces from Kursk. Russia reportedly launched approximately 150 drones targeting Ukraine. In a related development, a Ukrainian suspect has admitted guilt in the murder of a Russian general near Moscow. Russia has declared its readiness to provide military assistance to North Korea, should the need arise. FATB's board is recommending the bank's first dividend payment since the onset of the war in Ukraine, signaling a potential shift in financial strategy. Russia has issued an arrest warrant for TV Rain journalist Yulia Taratuta, marking an escalation of media-related tensions. European Union. The EU is currently formulating its 17th package of sanctions aimed at Russia, intensifying economic pressure. As mentioned previously, a recent survey indicates that most banks in the EU would prefer a delay in the adoption of new trading book rules, aligning with similar actions taken in the US and the UK. China. Pop Mart, the company behind the popular Labu toys, is experiencing growing success in the US, with its business already showing signs of a boom. As noted earlier, the U.S. Department of Agriculture's April Outlook report indicates that Brazil is benefiting from China's diversification of soybean imports, driven by tariffs on U.S. soybeans. India's economic indicators are showing positive momentum alongside potential headwinds. Ankur Jiveri of GM Financial warns that a trade war could threaten the Indian economy, although strong domestic consumption could cushion the blow. The Sensex closed at 80,218.37, a 1.27% increase, and the Nifty 50 rose by 1.2% to 24,328.5, enriching investors by over $4 lakh crore in one day. Castrol India's Q4 net profit saw an 8% year-over-year increase, reaching at 233 crore, with shares closing at 209.45, up 3.8%. Maruti Suzuki is grappling with weak demand and rising costs but hopes its electric vehicle strategy will restore market dominance. Macrotech developers, Lotha, forecasts substantial pre-sales growth this financial year, driven by expansion in Mumbai, Bengaluru, and Pune. India is also active on the global stage. A $7.40 billion deal with France was finalized for Rafale jets. India and the UK are working to resolve key issues to finalize a trade agreement. Ed Yardeni suggests India is a top emerging market set to gain from a U.S. trade policy reset. Evidence suggests Chinese firms are increasingly using Indian exporters to fulfill U.S. orders. Meanwhile, the closure of Pakistan's airspace is causing Indian airlines to reroute flights to Europe, North America, and the Middle East, but airfares are not expected to increase. Zepto is attracting investors by offering a 16% yield in an India private credit deal. Saudi Arabia faces complex economic currents. Foreign direct investment has dipped to its lowest in 3 years. Non-oil exports, however, hit a record high in 2024, surpassing $137 billion. Authorities are contemplating reducing bank guarantee requirements for finance licenses. The stagnation of projected oil prices presents a potential hurdle to the kingdom's vision 2030 transformation. Despite this, some public investment fund, PIF, targets have been surpassed. Amina Group is preparing for an IPO in Saudi Arabia after securing USD $135 million. The advanced packaging market is forecast to reach USD $1057.8 million by 2033, showing a 9.9% CAGR. The mobile gaming market is also expected to surge to USD 3.36 billion by 2033, with a 10.6% CAGR. In a notable geopolitical move, Saudi Arabia, alongside Qatar, will settle Syria's World Bank debts, totaling around US $15 million. Blacklane plans to introduce its on-demand service in Saudi Arabia next month. Germany is facing worries about the increasing costs of driver's licenses for young people, leading to demands for changes. The IMF's Europe head believes that Germany's economic boost won't be enough to offset the harm from tariffs on the Eurozone. The economy's CEO Wildberger is stepping down to join the German government, while Merck KGaA plans to buy U.S. biotech company SpringWorks for $3.90 billion. Additionally, Ugritz has suggested splitting Germany's power market into separate zones. A German startup supported by NATO is seeking funds to create military robots. Turning to the United States, DL will once again ship packages over $800 to U.S. customers. This follows DHL's initial suspension of these shipments due to new U.S. customs rules. Europe is positioning itself to capitalize on the U.S. dollar's instability, highlighting regional stability and legal frameworks to draw in foreign investment. Stock markets across Europe have seen a positive start, fueled by expectations surrounding upcoming corporate earnings and key economic data from both sides of the Atlantic. Despite ongoing macroeconomic uncertainties, investment activity in Europe's real estate market is indicating a potential rebound, according to recent findings by Ceasefire. Power outages have affected several major European countries. Overall, European equities are trending upward as investors navigate the complexities of tariffs and look ahead to new economic indicators. Australia's stock market is predicted to hold steady, buoyed by gains in the banking and healthcare sectors. The Australian Securities Exchange, ASX, is revising its M&A regulations after concerns were raised following the James Hardie case. PAX is growing its footprint in the Australian payments sector. Alkane, an Australian mining firm, is merging with Canada's Mandalay Resources, creating a more diverse mining operation. Small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, in Australia have reported better business conditions and increased confidence in the first quarter, though overall sentiment remains negative. S&P Global Ratings has warned that Australia's AAA credit rating could be in jeopardy. Turning to Canada, Alkane Resources Ltd, an Australian mining company, is merging with Mandalay Resources Corporation, a Canadian firm. This merger will create a new, diversified gold and antimony production company. The combined entity is expected to benefit from Mandalay's gold operations and Alkane's financial strength. South Korea's economic outlook presents a mixed bag of developments. Trade negotiations with the U.S. are on hold until after the June elections, a decision with potential ramifications for bilateral commerce. The job market is currently facing a notable slowdown. Despite these challenges, foreign investors are demonstrating confidence in the South Korean economy by purchasing a record amount of bonds. Meanwhile, Korean Air is expanding its A380 service between Seoul and Los Angeles, reflecting increased demand for travel on this route. In the consumer market, Dyson has launched an updated version of its Airwrap in South Korea, emphasizing its enhanced performance. As Canada prepares for elections, the shadow of potential U.S. trade tariffs looms large, with both Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and Liberal leader Mark Carney vowing to challenge any such measures from their southern neighbors. The Toronto Stock Exchange experienced a positive opening as voting began. Shifting market dynamics, influenced by the trade tensions, have also led Canadian oil drillers to increase their focus on natural gas production. Moving south, the United States saw Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell testify before Congress, reiterating the central bank's commitment to controlling inflation despite recent data indicating a potential slowdown in economic growth. The hearings focused on the Fed's monetary policy and its impact on employment. Meanwhile, President Biden announced a new infrastructure initiative targeting upgrades to the nation's aging water systems, allocating billions of dollars to improve water quality and reduce lead contamination. Across the Atlantic, the United Kingdom is grappling with ongoing debates over its post-Brexit trade relationship with the European Union, particularly concerning agricultural exports and financial services. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing pressure from both within his party and from opposition. Labour leader Keir Starmer to renegotiate certain aspects of the existing trade agreement to alleviate economic strain on key sectors. The Bank of England also released its latest inflation forecast, predicting a slower return to the target rate than previously anticipated. In France, President Emmanuel Macron is pushing for reforms to the country's pension system, raising the retirement age, a move that has sparked widespread protests and strikes across the nation. Labor unions are vehemently opposing the changes, arguing they will disproportionately affect lower-income workers. The French government defended the reforms as necessary to ensure the long-term sustainability of the pension system. Meanwhile, in Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz is facing scrutiny over his government's response to rising energy prices exacerbated by the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The coalition government is divided on the best approach, with disagreements on whether to extend the lifespan of nuclear power plants or to rely more heavily on renewable energy sources. The debate has intensified amid concerns about energy security and the potential for winter shortages. Japan's Nikkei index is experiencing a rally fueled by optimism around prospective trade tariff negotiations with the United States, with the yen's value and the Bank of Japan's BoJ monetary policy expected to take center stage. Despite this market enthusiasm, Komatsu projects a 27% profit decrease for the current year, citing the strengthening yen and the imposition of tariffs as contributing factors. Shifting to energy, JERA is evaluating Alaska as a viable source for land procurement. Adding to corporate news, a Japan-listed affiliate of Exeo Group is moving forward with plans to privatize Procuri Corp at a price of 32 cents per share. The Japanese stock market reflected this mixed economic outlook, closing higher overall, with the Nikkei 225 index registering a gain of 0.35%. Russia's President Vladimir Putin declared a 3-day ceasefire in May, strategically timed to align with the 80th anniversary of the WW victory celebration. Meanwhile, Ukraine is advocating for an immediate and comprehensive truce. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has voiced his disapproval of Russia's military actions and is encouraging Putin to engage in negotiations to resolve the conflict, suggesting that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky might be open to ceding Crimea. Asian markets presented a mixed picture, with investors closely monitoring trade talks and U.S. tariff uncertainties. Despite real estate resilience, no Asian property market is completely shielded from trade shocks. Asian shares did see a slight uptick, signaling cautious optimism amid these trade concerns. Singapore is in discussions with the U.S. regarding potential concessions on pharmaceutical exports and AI chip access, according to Trade and Deputy Prime Minister Gan Kim-yong, while the nation's stock market closed lower, reflecting investor concerns. In India, the Sensex climbed to a 4-month peak, fueled by a surge in Reliance stock, though analysts warned that rising tensions between New Delhi and Islamabad could negatively affect the market. The Philippines has denied reports that China has taken control of a disputed reef in the South China Sea. Kuwait Petroleum is set to purchase a 25% share in Wanhua Chemical, a Chinese company. Spain and Portugal experienced a widespread power outage, disrupting traffic lights, causing the closure of metro systems in Lisbon and Porto, and suspending train services. Despite the outage, the Spanish stock market continued operations. Italy's Mediobanca has made a $7.20 billion offer for Banca Generali, as European markets are expected to open with gains. The British car industry is facing increased pressure from Trump's tariffs, with the US being its largest market. Norway's sovereign wealth fund reported a $40 billion in the first quarter, primarily due to declines in the technology sector. Saudi Arabia and Qatar have jointly pledged 15 million Rp, $252.8 billion to the World Bank for Syria's debt. The ICMA has announced new chairs for its Southern African Regional Committee. The speaker lineup has been unveiled for Latin lawyers in a conference in Brazil. Stock markets are generally on the rise as investors follow trade negotiations. A compilation of news from Monday in Switzerland is available. A key question is being asked: can Europe sustain itself without financial support from the United States? And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.